Hello, world, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the Ysn Power Hour. DJ Yoakley with you, and it's all presented by our friends over at Toyota of Warren. So happy you can join us today. We got a great show for you. One of my dearest friends in the entire universe is here, Mr. Gary Altizer, who is the cherry picking fool who is hopefully making you a lot of money on Sundays. We're going to talk to him about kind of the genesis of cherry pickers here on YSN. We're going to talk to him about 49ers. We're going to talk to him about the state of Wellsville. And also, he is the wrestling guru that has been with us for an incredible amount of time. I think this is year 5 for Mr. Altizer, 4 or 5. So we'll talk to him about kind of, his ride on the YSN Express. All of that and more coming up here in just a few moments. Big news out of Pittsburgh today for those of you who are just getting your news. Arthur Smith is the new offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Arthur Smith is the former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, who was fired. I don't even know. I've never used this word, unceremoniously. I don't even know if that's the right contact. I just wanted to use the word. But I think that when you look at what he brings the Steelers, it's a little bit of the youth movement. Not as young as some of these OCs are going nowadays, 35, 36, 37 years old. But Arthur Smith, I think, is a solid pick from Mike Tomlin. And obviously they were up against it because these coordinators are starting to go. I mean, they're starting to be taken off the board. So the Steelers had to make sure that they had their guy. But that's breaking news out of Pittsburgh. So congratulations and hopefully congratulations to the Pittsburgh Steelers for their new hire of their offensive coordinator, Mr. Arthur Smith. All right, at this time, it is time to bring in the OG, the real G, Gary Altizer, my good friend of many years from Wellsville. What happened to the – Gary, can you hear me? All right, so we're going to try that again. Technical difficulties never fails. When Gary pops back in here, we'll pop him in. But Gary Altizer, a legend in Wellsville, a guy that knows wrestling up and down. He's well known throughout the wrestling community. One of the few 49ers fans in this area that I know and trust, and a guy that certainly, from our perspective, from YSN's perspective, holds it down in Southern Columbiana County to make sure that all the kids are getting coverage, not just Wellsville per se. That's his stomping ground, so he makes sure that they are protected. But at the same time, it's a scenario where he is able to make sure that kids are getting coverage, wrestlers, especially in an age where wrestling gets very little coverage. He and Chris Colucci have been doing yeoman's work to make sure that wrestling is on the main stage. So without further ado, let's try this again. GA, what's up, buddy?
Hey, sorry I lost you there for a second.
Hey, welcome to technology, right? We're used to dealing with it. What's new with Gary Altizer now?
Oh, just heading into the end of the wrestling season here, the last month, getting ready for sectionals, trying to get my guys healthy and keep them healthy, which has been a very big challenge this season.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, there's a lot of people that think that you go into wrestling season and you're healthy the entire season. You're making sure, it's just bumps and bruises. That's all they say. But a little bit more serious than that. I mean, it can be just bumps and bruises, but a lot of times you're dealing with illness, sickness. You're dealing with some serious injuries. And these are tough dudes and tough ladies that are taking on one of I think, the world's toughest sports.
Well, just to give you a quick rundown of just our team and our health, I've had 2 broken hands. I've got a Liz Frank injury on a foot, which is a 5-month minimum injury to recover from. I had a torn shoulder, and I had 2 kids that were out multiple weeks with this cold virus that's going around that just lingers and doesn't go away. One of them even had to go to the hospital for it. And I have a roster of 12. So if that tells you anything, I basically have had half of my kids this entire season. and it's just one of those things where some years you get lucky and you don't get the injuries bug, and some years you don't. And the last year, this year, I have not had any luck whatsoever with health, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that it's all done now. We should have everybody back for our home tournament, the Buck Bailey tournament, which is a week from Saturday on February 10th. I'm hoping to have all or almost all of my guys back. And then after that, it's straight into sectionals. And the last couple of weeks of the season, we and nor do most teams have anything scheduled because they want guys to get healthy. I'm just hoping we can stay healthy until we get there to the postseason.
You know, one of the crazy things about all of this is the fact that you and Chris Colucci have single-handedly, I don't know if you double-handedly taken the YSN Express in the wrestling division of it, and you have promoted it. You've put it on a platform, and you've given wrestling a voice here in Northeast Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, that from the media standpoint, it didn't really have prior to last year. For you to be able to do that, why was that so important to you? And what have been some of the learning curves that you've learned along the way with trying to promote a sport that there is a lot of people that love this sport, but there are a lot of people, I guess a lot more people like myself that are learning it for the first time and appreciating it for the first time. What have been some of the learning experiences that you've had over the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, it definitely means a lot because I don't think wrestlers get enough recognition. And, as the world's changed with the internet, it is starting to get a little bit more. There is Flow Wrestling, which is a whole basic internet app or channel dedicated to wrestling. But as far as locally, they would get in some of the local newspapers when something big happened, and once in a while on the news for a 30-second clip, but the exposure was not there like it should have been. And I'm really thankful that YSN has, agreed to just take this and run with it. And the kids really deserve the spotlight because the sport is like no other. I say this on Wrestling Wednesdays all the time, on Running Point, that the amount of work that these kids put in with this sport, I don't think you can appreciate unless you've been around it. It's not like basketball where you have 2 and sometimes 3 games in a week, or football where you practice Monday through Wednesday, you do a walkthrough on Thursday, you have the game Friday, and you watch film on Saturday. We're practicing 5 days a week, and then wrestling on Saturdays. For sometimes you're gone 16 hours at these tournaments. So the grind that these kids have to go through, all doing that all while they're maintaining their weight, keeping up with their grades and their responsibilities with their studies, and then whatever they have going on at home. It's just it's a lot to put on a kid's plate, and it makes a lot of it makes a lot of boys turn into young men, and a lot of girls turn into young ladies, because it teaches you a lot about life. And it's really, I think it's something that only you can appreciate if you experience it, but being able to get the word out about it, hopefully, some kids have seen interviews with some of these guys that we've done on Running Point and say, hey, I'd like to get into this sport, or a parent has piqued their interest and mentioned it to their kids, or somebody's gotten involved to coach. Those are the things that I'm hopeful for. As far as the learning curve goes with getting exposure, the more you focus on the kids, the more exposure there is. Talking philosophy about the sport, that's great. I love doing that. I could do that every day of my life. But talking about the kids is what gets the exposure out there. YSN has and always has done a great job of focusing on the kids, and that's where the focus should be.
Interesting. I love that last point because you get it more than most about kind of our mission statement. But for you, it's a little bit different. It's a different angle because you are coaching and you are invested, obviously, in the Wellsville community. But for you, is there anybody, and we'll give you plenty of time to talk about your guys and your gals later, but is there anybody that's really impressed you from the wrestling standpoint this year that you sit there and kind of like, it used to be must-see TV? Is there anybody that we need to see wrestling this year that this will be the last opportunity for us in the next few weeks to a couple months of seeing them wrestle before they either move on from the sport or move on to the next level?
Yeah, we've focused with a couple of those kids on Wrestling Wednesday. Adam Heckman out of Howland. He's having an amazing season. He just won the EOWL, and he won a really tough match over another great wrestler, Bobby Buhite from Beaver Local. He's had a great year. He's a state placer. He had 2 state placers there battling it out. Marky Stankorb's having an amazing season. Nick Bowser. That heavyweight weight class at the EOWL was one that where you saw a lot of high level kids wrestling. Those are the kids that come up to my mind there right off the top of my head. Those are the ones that I would be searching out for. Dallas McCracken from United Local, another heavyweight. He was a state finalist last year. I know that he's looking to bring home, a gold medal there for Coach Bo Marriage and his staff and that United Local community. Those are the ones that I can think of. I believe they're all seniors, and they've all been putting in their work for a lot of years. And I'm sure all of them have a goal to be on the top of the podium. That is when you start to see the end of the season is when you start to see who is really ready to take that next step. And they're also, and this is just me being realistic and being honest here, the end of the season, you do see guys fall off. You do see people who burn out because the season is such a grind. When you get to the end of the season, every year at districts, I see kids who are ranked really highly, returning state qualifiers or placers, who you could just tell they're mentally not there anymore because the grind of the season has taken over. So from now until the sectionals time, you're going to see who really wants it, who wants to be there. And then come sectionals, if you're locked in and you're focused, your number one goal is to get to Columbus and get on the podium as high as possible. So hopefully good luck to all of those guys there. There are a lot of great kids, a lot of great interviews that we've had with them. And every time we interview someone and we talk to the kids, I'm just always impressed that the ones that we've interviewed anyway, they get the essence of the sport and they talk about the right things, which I really, really love to hear.
What's interesting to me out of everything you just said, and there's a lot to unpack there, but the fatigue that these wrestlers have at the end of the season, is there anything that coaches can do or parents can do or even the wrestlers themselves can do to kind of fight that, to battle that? Because, it's easy in basketball and it's easy in football as you just run wind sprints. I don't think it's the same kind of thing in wrestling. I think it's a different type of fatigue. Am I wrong?
No, you're 100% right. Football shape is not wrestling shape, and you see that every year when the kids come into wrestling and they just came off of a football season, and that shape is different. In football, you're preparing to be strong and to go 100%, 1,000% for 5, 6, 7 seconds. And wrestling in 6 straight minutes, and it's an exhaustion that you can't appreciate unless you've experienced it yourself. It is another level of exhaustion. So, how do you battle that? How do you combat that? For me personally, you just have to know how to pace the season in the wrestling room. If you go and you're going hard every day, every single hour, every minute that you're in there with the kids, I don't think that it's preparing them and their bodies, giving them the kind of rest that they need to have a long season, because it starts in mid-November and goes until mid-March. So you're talking 4 full months, just the in-season part. And a lot of kids wrestle in the off season. So, the kids not cutting a bunch of weight all season long, that can really get you. That can burn you out mentally more than anything. In my opinion, if the kids kind of stay away from that. And coaching wise, this is just me personally. At the beginning of the season and towards the middle, we're going a lot longer in the room than we are towards the end of the season. You're teaching a lot of stuff at the beginning and middle of the season. And then towards the end of the season, those things should all be, tons of muscle memory for that kind of stuff. You're focusing on working out kinks, sharpening things up, keeping your wind, but you also don't want their bodies grinded into the ground and their minds burn out when you get to that sectional tournament.
I'm really interested because, with a young one that competes, and he hasn't competed yet, but he's learning the sport of wrestling. What I think one of the biggest things that you don't really think about is there's really no break. Like when you're on the mat, you're on the mat. There's no halftime. There's no cool. I mean, there's the little breaks, like after what do you call it? The periods or whatever
Right.
that is.
Yeah.
But there's no like real opportunity to talk to your coach unless there's an injury or a nosebleed or something like that. we talk all the time in football season about the adjustments that are made at halftime, the adjustments that are made, between quarters. How do coaches create adjustments mid-match so that way their players, their wrestlers are at an advantage to win when otherwise maybe they weren't going to? Maybe they obviously you have a better advantage outside the circle than they do inside sometimes because you can see what's going on. How do you make that keen observation and get it to that wrestler without shouting it so maybe the competition hears?
This is a great question, and welcome to the strife that it is to be a wrestling coach. The struggle that you have, because as a coach and you're sitting in that corner, you see all kinds of things that you want your wrestler to know. Wrestling coaches yell from the corners. It's the only thing that you can do, and you just have to hope that your wrestler listens, hears it, digests it, and knows what you're saying. And again, you don't want to yell out. It's tough to yell out something without the opponent hearing it, but they usually are paying attention to their own coaches. And there is a battle there with, I see this is wide open. This is wide open. I don't want to just start screaming this over and over. So you hope that when they go out of bounds towards you, if your kid's been wrestling for a while, they know, look right at your coach, look at me. And maybe you mouth it. Maybe you use your arm or your body to kind of show what you're talking about. Or if there is blood time where somebody's nose is bleeding, they can come to stand at the edge of the circle near you and you get a chance to talk to them. I've thought about this a lot. I wish there was some way to have a one timeout per match for like 15 seconds. I know that probably not being a popular option, but man, coaches could really, really do a lot more if they had just a few seconds to talk to their wrestler and tell them something about what's going on in the match. But that's just in fantasy land, me, thinking out loud. There isn't any way to do it. Your wrestler just has to be prepared for all situations. And by drilling constantly, by situational drills, by really nothing better than the experience on the mat, they should be prepared for all things. But I use this comparison all the time. Imagine taking someone who's never swung a golf club and to go play 18 holes. That's kind of what it feels like for a new wrestler to be on the mat. It takes a long time to get the muscle memory and the repetitions and the questions and your center of gravity and getting your hips under you to try to get to a point where you can be a competent wrestler. It just takes a lot of time, effort, and I can't think of any way to put it more than the repetitions, not only physically but mentally on the mat.
It's funny that there hasn't been any, at least to my knowledge. I've always admired the fact that you just have to shout. I mean, you have to listen for, the tonality of your voice is going to tell that wrestler what they need to do. And to be able to tune out the other coach in the other corner is an acquired skill. So, there's no wristbands, there's no, green dot or anything like that, like we see in the NFL. Is there are there plays? Like, can you create plays for certain scenarios and you go orange 356 and all of a sudden they know it? Is that an option, or is that just too much to process when you're being pinned against the mat?
No, there are words that are used for certain moves, and some teams have a couple of moves here and there that maybe they'll call something a different name, but most of the time it's pretty uniform. Each area calls certain moves different things. Like this part of the country will call a move this, and on the West Coast they call it something else.
Really?
But for what you're saying specifically for a specific situation, if you scout as a coach, if you know a kid and what their tendencies are, you hopefully go over those things in practice. Like, hey, this 132 pounder, I've seen him wrestle before in the past. He likes to do X, Y, and Z. We just need to be mentally prepared for that. But your focus needs to be more on your kid and what they're going to do, as opposed to reacting to what the other one does. You dictate the match, and you don't have to worry about those kind of things. As far as, a play or whatever, in between the periods, they do flip a coin, red or green, whatever anklet you have on. If that wins, you get to choose top, bottom, neutral, or defer. So if you know your kid and you know the kid that you're wrestling, you want to do what's best for your wrestler in that moment. But other than that, there's not a lot of one-on-one time to go over what's happening in the match.
In a situation like that, are you leaning towards the strength of your wrestler, or if you have scouted, do you say, okay, this guy is not good standing on his own 2 feet, he's better on the ground? You know, do you kind of work towards the weakness of the opponent?
Well, you just have to know your wrestler well. So whatever would be best. If that opponent is very weak in this position and your wrestler is also very weak, well, then you probably stay away from it. And it's just kind of a balancing act. If you know that your kid is really, really good on top position and he's good at turning kids to their back, and this guy's not good at the bottom, then you 100% go with the top, or vice versa. And it's also what's happening in the match and how the ref calls the match. Some refs are quick to count back points. Some aren't. Some let them wrestle a little bit out of bounds. There are rules, but you see some let things go a little bit more, or some of them call things tight. It's just there's a million things you have to keep in mind at that exact moment, and you only get 6 minutes at most to do it unless it goes to overtime. So just a lot of things that you have to balance out at once while you're there on the mat.
What's one thing? How long have you been coaching wrestling?
So total, this is 17th year when you count the elementary, the junior high. Like I was a head coach of the junior high in the past and of the elementary school. And then there were 4 years. This is my 9th year as a high school head coach, where I also was a head coach of the junior high. And I had to stack my schedule every other week for each team so I could be there. So this is 17 years, maybe more seasons than that, if you
My
want to count it.
gosh. All right. So for you to go back and talk to rookie coach Gary Altizer, what's one thing that you would tell him that it would be worth the wait? And what's one thing that you would tell him, man, this is going to be hell on wheels for you?
Worth the wait. So when I took over the program, I had all first year kids but one. And that first year, we had a schedule that was not for first year kids, and we took a ton of lumps. And like I told you with the analogy with golf, it was just a rough season that, it really challenged me as a person because my brain was not stopping. I was trying every single day, reading things, listening to things, talking to people, talking to other coaches, talking to coaches in other sports. What can I do? How can I be better? How can I reach my kids to get them, to know things? So if I could tell myself, hey, everything's going to be fine, man. This isn't an overnight thing. This isn't like other sports where you can do a turnaround in 1 year or 2 years. This is going to take you 4 or 5, and that's exactly what happened. My 5th year as a head coach, we won our league. We won 3 tournaments. The next year, we set the school record for most dual wins in a year. I've had 500 win wrestlers. If I could have told myself to relax a little bit more that first year, that hey, everything's going to be okay. I was stressed a lot, making sure I was doing everything that I could and making sure that I was there for the kids as much as I could be. Maybe if I didn't have as much stress, I would have slept more. That would have been nice. And if I could go back and say, hey, X, Y, and Z is going to be hell on wheels, you have to deal with a lot of other things with wrestling, keeping their minds sharp, making sure that their grades are good. I'm really, really try to be on top of grades as much as I possibly can. Bringing in an assistant coach that's good at things that you're not has helped me a ton. I admittedly have many flaws as a person and a head coach. So I try to get people around me who are better at things than I am in certain areas. But that all did eventually come with experience. And I'm just kind of thankful. I'm almost thankful that I was as stressed out the first couple of years as I was, because it led me to go all in on everything. And I kind of figured certain things out that I was struggling with quicker than I probably would have had I been relaxed, but I sure could have used the extra sleep.
I think we can all use extra sleep when it comes down to that stuff. And if you care about something as much as you do, naturally you're going to lose some along the way, my friend. Yeah. All right. So many people know that you're from Wellsville. You are born and bred. You bleed black and orange without a shadow of a doubt. But many people don't maybe know why you and how you fell into the YSN gig that you did, and how you've been able to not only grow as an announcer, but as a part of our YSN family and team that we have here to do more than just Wellsville, which I don't think was necessarily on your bingo card when you started, but you've certainly grown into being able to, at the drop of a hat, being able to go and do any sport for any team. But you really key on Columbiana County, which we can appreciate as both being Columbiana County boys. For you, when you started with us at YSN, what was the brass ring for you? What got you up and said, "Hey," and raised your hand, "I want to do this"?
Well, I mean, as I've noticed, the longer I do this and work with more people at YSN, of course, my dream as a kid was to do that, to be some kind of a broadcaster, an announcer. My mom even has an essay I wrote in elementary school that I wanted to do that someday. So when I got the call, this is my 6th season with YSN, and asked if I wanted to do the job, I was already pulled in a million directions, and I thought, I'm not going to have time to do this. I can't. But then it popped in my head, like, are you crazy? Like, this is something you've always wanted to do. And that doubt was only there for about 3 seconds. And I just said, hey, I'm going to go all in on this. And it's not, I'm on the board of education. I coach. I have a job. Those things are work. But this, even though, yes, it's work, there's things to do. It's not, it's respite for me. It re-energizes me every time I do a game. So when I am thinking about, okay, how am I going to do this and go all in on this and do it well? I've been doing announcing in my head my entire life. So every time I would watch a game, I don't know, it just got to be a habit where in my head I would be calling the plays or doing the announcing or picking out things to talk about. So it was so much fun to get to do that in real life. And, I appreciate YSN giving me the opportunity to do it. I love being able to get on the mic. And the main reason that I did it is because I wanted to feature Wellsville kids and talk about the good things that they do. So I try to make it a point that no matter what I'm doing, that I talk about something good that has happened in the district and something that the kids have done that is a positive. Whether it's the robotics team, a play, another sports team other than what I'm covering and how they've done, something that's coming up within the district. I try to do it that way and come at it from that position, that it's not about me, it's about the kids. And I'm not trying to float my own boat. I'm just trying to keep in perspective that, it's a privilege to do these things, but take this opportunity to feature the kids in your community because they, as much as YSN has done, I don't think more exposure will ever be a bad thing for students.
No, I love that. And we are so grateful to have you on board. And I think having you on for the playoffs this year was a real treat because it was like watching someone go to Disney World for the first time. You were just bright eyed at every single thing that happened. And more than just announcing the games, you were learning the business side of it, which I was really interested. It was because usually people don't care about that side of it, but you were all in on every single tentacle that octopus had. And I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful because you never put your hand down when you are asked to do something. It's always up there. Where did you learn that trait? And who do you kind of point to as your inspiration for being able to do things that aren't always comfortable, but knowing that you're going to put your best foot forward and give it your best shot?
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to take everything back to wrestling, but I think you kind of learn those things as a wrestler and as a coach because you have to grind through things. Wrestling practice isn't fun usually. It's hard. It's something that you have to push through because you're doing so much physically that you mentally get sharp about doing things. I don't know that I'm anything special in that regard, but if anything has taught me to push through things I don't like to do, it was wrestling. Because I mean, when you're sweating like crazy and you're watching your weight and you haven't slept and you have a big match coming up and you just don't feel like running these wind sprints, doing these push-ups, running through these drills, you still got to do it. I would say that. And, growing up with a single mom home, she worked in the morning. She would work at a power plant filling vending machines, and in the evenings she went and worked at a corner store. So she was working from sun up to sundown my whole life. So I guess there was also that.
I love that. I mean, to me, there's an element in you, obviously, of your mom that is you were just a grinder. I mean, you were a guy that if we had a hockey team, man, you would be my first round draft pick every single time because you're going to get that puck that's on the boards, and it shows. Your wrestling, it shows because you are not willing to put in hard work in everything you do in life, and that is to me is very impressive. As far as YSN goes, you've had the luxury of a lot of really cool opportunities and calls. Is there one or two that really you look at and say, man, if I don't get to ever do it again, these are the two that I really cherish and I'm going to take to the grave with me?
Well, I think some of them was shared with you on those
Oh,
volleyball team runs. Man, how much fun did we have following the Wellsville volleyball team? They've been
blast.
successful every single year. Getting to the Elite Eight, I don't know how many times. Having undefeated seasons and all state players. Those are the ones that really have been a blast to do. I started with football. And it was obviously the main sport that I did. Those are always a good time, but everybody loves football. I like being able to do a sport like volleyball that isn't as much in the mainstream as basketball or football, and being able to bring that to the community. And man, did our community ever support those girls. I mean, we had some great numbers of people watching like crazy. I think one of those district finals games, actually it was one of the regional final games, if I'm remembering right, one of them had like 6,000 viewers. And for a community that has 3,500 people who live in it in total, I think that's saying something. And it just goes to show when the exposure is there, the communities and the people will get behind them. I would say that for sure. And then one other thing that I didn't get to do on YSN, which I would never let that happen again, because at the time, I probably could have just went live on my phone, but was at the state track meet. I got to see a Wellsville athlete win a state title. Justin Wright won the 100-meter dash. That was amazing. And I did post on my Facebook, and YSN was able to share those things. That was that's one of my favorite memories since I've been a coach and a Board of Education member, is going and watching one of our kids stand on the top of the podium at the state tournament.
What is one thing that you want to cover? Like before it's all said and done, and we're on like the 4-yard line. I tell you all the time, looking at 96 yards dead in the face. What's one thing that you want to do that maybe you haven't done yet, or one thing you want to call, or an event that you want to be part of with the network?
Well, I mean, you've given me the opportunity with the Cherry Pickers to talk about, sports betting that is now legal in Ohio. That's been a blast. I really appreciate that. It's fun to be able to talk about the NFL. When you're an NFL junkie, being able to talk about that's been amazing. But if we ever get college wrestling, I'd love to be able to cover that. It's tough for me to do high school wrestling while I coach. So if I ever retire, I would definitely go head first into that. But if there's ever a college wrestling team out there that needs somebody to be their voice, I will be standing in the front of the line for that, for sure.
I love that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when hopefully your season doesn't end until it's all said and done, you get somebody down there to represent the Wellsville Tigers. But if things happen and you're cut short, are you going to be hopping in the announcer's booth with Colucci and talking some wrestling? Did I lose you there? I think we lost Gary. We were going to ask, obviously, about that particular situation with the wrestling. Gary is, again, not only is he one of the best coaches wrestling wise, but as far as announcers go, my guy he gets as amped up as anybody, and we've got some guys that can take it to 10 really quickly. So from my perspective, to get Gary in the booth with a Chris Colucci, two guys that know and love wrestling. We had the EOWLs that went really, really well for us. We had over 800 views during the day for that, for the finals. Can't thank people enough that have really pointed to us for wrestling and saying and identified this is a sport that needs coverage more than anybody. And certainly Gary and Chris Colucci have done that. Anthony has welcomed Gary onto his shows on Wednesdays for Wrestling Wednesdays, which you can see tomorrow here on YSN and throughout the season. Really fortunate. And hopefully Gary's able to, and maybe not. Maybe I want to see the success of Wellsville wrestling because of guys like Gary. So it's almost better if he's not announcing. But if the season happens to come up short, it'd be good to see Gary able to jump into that seat, and he and Chris, I'm sure, would do a phenomenal job. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hopefully get Gary back on the line. All of that and more after a word from our great sponsors at Toyota of Warren, that proudly presents this show on a daily basis. We'll be right back.
We believe expectations are made to be exceeded. At the new Toyota of Warren, it's about more than just getting a great deal. It's about service you can count on and a friendship you can trust. Year after year, we've done what we do best. We've gone the extra mile so you could too. Because we know it's just not about buying a new car. It's the start of a new adventure. Toyota of Warren, driven by you.
It means the world to me to know that what we're doing is impacting people. And whether it's simply, I got to watch my son or daughter when I was out of town, or we just love watching YSN. We love what you do for our son or daughter. So whenever someone says thank you or someone is appreciative of what we're doing, it tells me everyone at YSN is doing what we initially set out to do, which is shine a light on these athletes and help them kind of promote themselves. My name is Anthony Hartwig, and my sports network is your sports network.
That was Anthony Hartwig and his sports network. Well, it better be your sports network. DJ Oakley here, wrapping things up. Unfortunately, we're unable to get Gary Altizer back on the horn. We will have him back, and we're hoping to get, not this Friday, next Friday, prior to the Super Bowl, have he and Anthony Hartwig on the show at the same time and have a little bit of a face-off, if you will, because Gary, who is clad in black and orange all the time for Wellsville, exchanges those colors once a week for, it's red and gold. And it's the San Francisco 49ers. Biggest 49ers fan I know. And certainly with he and Anthony being able to go back and forth, I can't wait for that face-off to have them. And Gary knows the betting lines and all that. So I'm interested to see what he does, because I think it's a 1-point spread right now going into the first week. We're 12 days away from the game. So there's a lot of time for that spread and all the bets and the side bets to go. So I really, 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 really want to have Gary give us some from the cherry pickers side of things. And we didn't get to talk about the genesis of cherry pickers, which is disappointing because I'm really interested to understand a little bit more about the beginnings of that and how he always wanted this show. I mean, he'd been bugging me for years about, hey, when this happens, I'm in. And to his credit, he did it, and it all kind of fell into his lap, and he's taken the ball and he's run with it. So looking forward to that. We've got an exciting couple weeks coming up on the network because we've got those two guys who are, I don't want to say they're going to be at each other's throats because Anthony's very, very standoffish. He's not gonna fight, but about his Chiefs, don't talk about his sports teams. Anthony can get a little feisty when he comes to talking about his sports teams. We've seen that in the past. Let's get to today's Joe Dickey Electric What's Your Spark, presented by our friends over at Joe Dickey Electric. Thanks to Eric and everybody over at Joe Dickey Electric for all their support throughout the years. And of course, that hopefully never ends because they've been so great to us, and they're a proud sponsor of YSN and especially this show. They love the spark. So here we go. It's the Joe Dickey Electric What's Your Spark, presented by Joe Dickey. Go to Dickey. Let's start that again. Let's go to DickeyElectric.com for anything that you need, commercial, residential, industrial. If you need to learn how to talk better, you can go to DickeyElectric.com for that as well. I'll be there after the show. So it's it's been brought to my attention that the media here in this area, and I use this air quotes, very, very tongue-in-cheek here. Not everything is earth-shattering breaking news, and not everybody is truly media. And I'm not trying to distinctly point fingers, but in the last week, we've had some scenarios where we know that we're breaking the news. We know that we're leading in the sports entertainment industry, especially here for local sports and things of that nature. We know what lane we live in, and this lane that I speak of, there's one entity that claims to be a sports media outlet that continues to just, I mean, if it was a Kentucky Derby, they'd be DQ'd. They'd be out because they're so far out of their lane. They're so far out of their market and their niche that it's almost to the point where there's litigation involved. And there's a situation that is brewing right now that they just don't understand. They've got no understanding of the situation. And they're just continuing to press that envelope forward and forward and forward. What I'm here to tell you is something that your parents probably told you a long time ago, and it's don't believe everything that you see on the internet, until it is verified, because you've got a lot of people that will sensationalize a lot of things. You have a lot of people, especially in the world of the internet, that can take something public when it's not vetted out. And they don't have any problem about taking other people's dirty laundry and throwing it out there. So just make sure that if you are looking through some of the stuff on the internet, if you're seeing it, if you're retweeting it, if you're sharing it, things of that nature, make sure that you do your due diligence before you push something out there that could affect somebody, a student athlete, a family, anything like that, because it really is a journalism thing. And not every media journalist is a vetted journalist. Sometimes they're just fanboys that have a Twitter account and a social media account. So that's my spark, is just make sure that you have the facts, make sure that you know what's going on, and make sure you understand the consequences for continuing to roll that snowball down the hill. That's going to do it for our show. Thanks you to Gary Altizer, who was incredible. And I'm looking forward to part 2, because there was a lot of questions that I was not able to get off of the platform here. So that just opens the door for part 2. Looking forward to seeing GA all the time, but I'm just happy when we can get him, man. Dude's busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest, and I'm proud of him for everything that he does. So that's going to do it for our show. Tune in tomorrow. We've got Scotty Mincher. We've got Ashley Schroeds and Mike Scrinjar, the coach of the Southern Local Lady Indians. We're going to talk about possibly the greatest of all time in Ashley Schroeds, a 2,000-point scorer, and so many different elements on her resume right now. That's it. That's all. And we will see you tomorrow, 3 to 4, right here on YSN. Thank you, everybody, and Godspeed. YSN thanks you for watching this presentation of Your Sports Network. For stories, stats, and more, go to YSN.